Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Samar Stevens, your Master of Ceremony for this session. Welcome to Investree 2021, which is concurrent to the 6th anniversary of Investree. And the anniversary actually gave birth to our new campaign, which is Grow Stronger. And in line with the idea, this year's Investree conference focuses on the discussion of revitalizing SMEs to support faster and resilient economic recovery. This session, that is conducted in parallel to session number 5, will dig deeper onto the influence of fintech companies on a regional scale and in providing support to boost the resilience of SMEs during the global pandemic. Within this session, our esteemed guests will share insights on how fintech innovation creates resilient ASEAN SMEs during the global pandemic. And interestingly, our lineup for our esteemed guests are Kok Chuan Lim, the co-founder and CEO of Investree Philippines, Jonathan Rosario, the CEO of LGU Suits Incorporated, Natsuda Pukanasut, Investree Thailand CEO, and Isared Shirativat, Head of Partnership Management Central Pattaya Property Development and Investment Public Company, Ltd. And of course, our moderator, who will be guiding the session, Mr. Malik Khan Kotadia, Chairman of Finnovation Labs. Before I hand the spotlight to Mr. Malik, though, I would like to remind the attendees that this webinar has prizes to win as well, which is quite interesting, I'd say. And it's quite easy. The first 2 lucky winners will win 200,000 rupiah through participating at our Menti Trivia Quiz that was conducted at the very beginning of the event and then after lunch. The announcement of those trivia winners will be conducted at the end of the event, though, so stay tuned for that one. The next one, there is a breezy credit amounting up to 1 million Indonesian rupiah to be won by 5 winners. And all they have to do is participate at our social media challenge, and that is to post photo or video of you attending Icon 2021 and then sharing which one is your favorite session, and also don't forget to tell us why. By posting the video or photo, do remember to tag our Instagram, our social media, that is investree.id, and also don't forget to put hashtag on them, Grow Stronger, with number 6 replacing number 9, and Icon 2021. At the end of the discussion, there will be 200 rupiah for 2 people who actually ask a really good questions. So be active. And last but not least, this is the most interesting part, is that there are 3 units of Samsung Galaxy smartphones to be won by 2 people who are super dedicated and active during the event, and 1 very lucky person who will be picked by our Wheels of Fortune at the end of the show. I would also like to thank our media partners, dailysocial.id, Good News from Indonesia, CNN Indonesia, Kompas.com, and Republika, that have sponsored and helped communicate our event. Finally, about our esteemed moderator, Mr. Malik Khan Kotadia. He graduated from Nasi Monji Institute of Management Studies with a master's degree in business administration. He started his career as a trainee engineer at Reliance Industry Limited and moved to Standard Chartered Bank later on and become a sales manager. Later along the line, though, he spent 13 years of experience at Citibank, where he served across various global roles and drove digital transformation and adoption across 42 countries. Currently, he is the co-founder and global board chairman at Global Impact FinTech Forum and the co-founder and chairman at Finnovation Labs Private Limited. Being a frequent keynote speaker, panel moderator, and chairman at marquee events globally, Malik has spoken at more than 100 summits in 25 different locations. Also, having addressed over 25,000 professionals as well as business leaders as well. Right, so without further ado, I would like to hand the spotlight to our moderator, Mr. Malik Khan Kotadia. I hope you enjoyed the sixth session of Investree Conference. Over to you, Mr. Malik.
Thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone today? I hope well. It's my pleasure to be back in Indonesia, although this time virtually. I was speaking at another conference in Jakarta as part of the Indonesia FinTech Month just a couple of weeks back, which was organized by OJK. So it's always a pleasure to be back in Indonesia and to share perspectives with all of you. As we heard, this panel is going to focus on the role of MSMEs and how they have turned out to be resilient. We've all seen how the last 2 years have not only been challenging on so many fronts, but completely unprecedented. And I think I am speaking for all of us when I say that what we've seen in the last 2 years are completely unprecedented in our lives, and perhaps not only our generation, but even maybe 2 or 3 generations. I don't think anybody has seen anything like this at a global scale since the Second World War. So it's been challenging. It's been very disruptive at a global scale. It's been transformative in some ways, and it's hit a lot of people, billions of people, especially MSMEs, medium, small, and micro enterprises. And if there was one silver lining in this pandemic, that was how quickly digital accelerated in this period. If you talk to people coming from the consulting background, if you listen to experts from McKinsey or BCG, etc., and I've spoken to many of my colleagues in Citibank or in the banking industry, they will all tell you that this pandemic has accelerated digital adoption by at least 5 years, if not more. And that has also turned out to be a lifesaver for the MSMEs. Those small businesses, small retailers, small wholesale businesses, which otherwise had no source of business income during lockdowns, and we've seen many waves of lockdowns in many countries in Southeast Asia, were forced to adopt to the digital marketplaces. And in fact, that turned out to be quite a lifesaver for them, and Investree has played a key part in that as well by continuing to provide credit during that period. But we're going to look at this aspect in more detail on how the MSMEs have turned out to be resilient in this period and how digital has almost been a lifesaver for them. To discuss this with me, I am joined by 4 fabulous panelists coming from very diverse backgrounds and different perspectives. So without further ado, I will request my panelists to do a very quick 1-minute introduction about themselves. We just go in alphabetical order, and then we'll jump into the question. So we'll start with Yaseret, then go to Jonathan, go to Casey, and then finally, last but not the least, Natsuda.
Yes, hi. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Iseret from Central Patna. I'm the head of partner management in our company here, and we look after a variety of tenants across our shopping malls here in Thailand, and the majority of our properties are based here in Thailand. Thank you very much.
Jonathan, kindly go next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Malik. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Investree, for inviting me to be a panelist in this.
Jonathan, I think you froze. I don't know whether it's at my end or everybody's seeing it.
and the current President and CEO of LG Suite Incorporated, a registered corporation in the Philippines since 2017.
Pros in some parts. So maybe if you can just spend 30 seconds more and repeat.
I'm sorry, maybe the connection. So by the way, I'm Jonathan Rosario, the co-founder and the president and CEO of LG Suite Incorporated, a registered corporation in the Philippines since 2017.
Thank you. I think Casey needs very little introduction, but nonetheless, it's my duty to invite him to introduce.
Thank you, Malik. My name is Casey Lim. My mom calls me Kok Chuan. The rest of you guys can call me Casey. I started Investree together with Adrian Amir late 2015. We are very delighted to be celebrating our 6th birthday. Before we started Investree, all of us were respectively in various different banks. My last role was actually with Natsuda. We were working in the regional sales team of Goldman Sachs. I used to cover regional financial institutions. Before that, I was doing private financing in Bank. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Casey. And I don't know if you remember, but I have quite a sharp memory when it comes to meeting people at conferences. You, me, and Adrian had last met at the, I think the
Correct.
Indonesia AI Summit in Bali in 2018.
Correct. I definitely remember that.
Yes, so we've come a long way. There was a time when we could all travel and speak at conferences. Now here we are, fully digital. On that note, Natsuda, over to you, please.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm Natsuda Bukhanasut. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Investree Thailand. As Casey mentioned, my previous job was at Goldman Sachs, sitting right next to Casey. I was at Goldman Sachs for 8 years. And then prior to that, I was actually a central banker with Bank of Thailand. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys may have about Investree Thailand. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's quite an interesting and diverse mix. So let's jump in straight away, since we are wanting to understand how the MSMEs have adapted during the pandemic and what has been the role of Investree and crowdfunding as one of the models which kept credit flowing during this rather tumultuous and challenging period. Casey, I'll start with you. You are obviously a co-founder and now you run Investree in the Philippines. So you and I need to chat offline because I'm currently based in the Philippines. But tell us, as the first licensed crowdfunding platform for SME financing in the Philippines, what challenges do you see that the SMEs face in terms of credit gap? I have been talking about that quite a bit during my opening. And what are some of the initiatives that have been taken either by you or the industry or the regulators to help address those challenges? And also, what have been some of the tactics that these MSMEs have taken to maintain their business amidst the pandemic?
Okay. Sure, Malik. Very good question. So we always knew, and the thesis for why we started Investree is there is a credit gap, a very, very large one across all countries in Southeast Asia. In the Philippines, that credit gap number is approximately $200 billion, according to IFC. So the problem is deep-rooted, and then there's multifaceted. So it actually falls both on the borrowers as well as the lenders, banking infrastructure, right? So I won't go into too much detail. We all know about these policies, right? So what Investree is trying to do is to try to bridge this gap somewhat. And we try to do that by addressing one of the concerns that small SMEs have actually, how do you pay for your working capital, your goods? So we do that by trying to come up with innovations in supply chain financing. So we were the first crowdfunding platform to be licensed out from, first and only crowdfunding platform to be licensed out from Philippines. So hopefully by engaging more with banks, educating them how we can fund small little companies, because they supply to great big listed companies and multinationals, right? By bridging this gap, we hope to address some of the working capital needs of these SMEs. Now, your second part of the question talks about the survival tactics of SMEs, especially during the pandemic, right? So the key word here is survival. There are some SMEs that we saw that actually thrived. For example, those that supply medical equipment, obviously during COVID, these will be doing pretty brisk business. But there will be some in F&B. When people can't leave their homes, you can't eat out. Just Malik, you talked about Bali, right? So I miss the food there. I miss traveling there, but we can't go. So all the F&B vendors, the hotel hospitality industries, these will all be adversely affected. So one of the ways that we see some of our clients, including Sir Jonathan here, actually adapt is reducing expenses. Okay, without trying to reduce your capacity that much, right? So you also mentioned earlier about trying to figure out how we can sell more, trying via other revenue or platforms. So we've seen some of our clients, instead of moving online through digital channels. Just now, our host was talking about all these IG, social media. So this is one platform where SMEs can directly connect to small clients and then try to sell direct. So they will be exploring some of these new revenue channels. And of course, it has to come to us as well. I do a little plug for Investree Philippines by exploring alternative working capital sources. So instead of calling on your bank, whose lines are also very tight during COVID times, because everyone's facing a lot of NPL issues. They should be looking at what other ways besides calling my mom and dad, my relatives, my village for working capital. Please explore some other new ways of raising capital. Crowdfunding platforms like Investree is there for SMEs in the Philippines.
Thank you, Casey. You mentioned a couple of important points and interesting ones. One is you spoke about operating efficiency and operating leverage that the MSMEs have brought in the last 2 years. And that's a great point because we hear a lot of analysts when we look at Bloomberg and CNBC, etc. Everybody talks about how large corporates have really kind of cut down their operating expenses and built operating leverage into the business. But I think we miss out that perhaps the MSMEs were forced to do it for survival, and therefore they've done it in an equally, if not more effective manner. And then you also spoke about keeping credit alive, which is what I mentioned as well. And we've seen it. I think it's only now, and I'm definitely talking about the Philippines, but I have a feeling it's the same in pretty much all of ASEAN, that it's only now that banks have started increasing their lending. We almost saw lending freeze in the last 2 years or 18 months where their book size remained static or in fact shrunk in some cases. Nobody was willing to open the tap, and it's only now that finally everybody is getting some confidence that, okay, fresh credit can flow into the system. So it's great that platforms like Investree have managed to keep the wheels of the economy running and running in a rather prudent manner, so to speak, without it being without compromising on the risk aspects of it. So with that context, let me go to Natsuda. From the Philippines to Thailand, as I said, we've seen similar challenges and similar pain in Thailand as well that we saw in the Philippines, and perhaps economies which are tourism dependent were more severely hit. So Natsuda, we've, depending on whichever study you look at, World Bank, ADB, etc., and recently ADBI, Asian Development Bank Institute, came up with its own report, which says that SMEs account for 99.8 or 99.9% of the total companies and generate millions, or tens of millions of jobs in Thailand. They contribute a significant chunk, by some estimates, almost 30 to 40% of the country's GDP. And yet we heard from Casey about this SME financing gap, which runs into tens of billions of dollars. So tell us, vis-a-vis Philippines, what is Investree Thailand's strategy in addressing this credit gap, especially in the context of the pandemic?
I think, first of all, the SME gap, the credit gap that you're talking about, exists pre-COVID, right? I mean, if you look at the percentage of credit that was going to SMEs in Thailand pre-crisis, it was about 2% of the total GDP. And as expected, during COVID, that number decreased even more. So the credit gap, in order to address the credit gap in the SME space, I think the first thing that we as Investree have to do is we have to take off our banker's hat, create a new mindset, and create a new credit scoring model that actually fits the SME. Now, this is something where banks can never really wrap their heads around. So I think the first thing is the credit scoring has to be right. in the previous sessions, you might have heard about the using alternative data. Exactly. You're going to have to take in alternative data. You're going to have to innovate how you receive payment in order to address this lingering gap. So even if we, get past COVID, the gap will always be there. It's a big gap. And I think the first thing you need to do is get the right mindset. Now, in terms of the strategy, similar to how Investree Indonesia got started, you work with the RMs that you have, and you also work with the partners. So basically, for example, Central Patana, who Issaret represents here, they represent for us a growth anchor. Someone who has a very, Central Patana builds hotels, integrated shopping malls, integrated, property developments. So they have a huge ecosystem of suppliers, of tenants, right? By working with the growth anchor like CPN, we not only get the information that we need to score the issuers or the borrowers, but we also get to see the behavior of the borrowers over time. So similar to Indonesia, we not only try to go with the RM model to find clients, but we definitely want to work with the growth anchors, the people that are the data aggregators, the ones that have a lot of information and are willing to work with us, have a commitment to help their supply chain ecosystem remain healthy. And during COVID, definitely, as Casey mentioned, you found SMEs who basically could not survive. And you found ones that are actually surviving, and you found ones that were thriving. I think Investree in Thailand, ever since we got the license, we've been able to help SMEs who were surviving to get through this crisis. They actually have very good, contracts with CPNs and other partners of ours. And we were able to help them at least survive in the meantime and basically get through it and hopefully survive after COVID. So the strategy remains the same, working with our partners and working through our RMs.
Thank you, Natsuda. Now that we've heard from the two leaders in Investree on what your strategies and why partnership plays such an important role, let me now go over to the partners. So let me start with Issaret. Firstly, Issaret, I think I wouldn't be speaking for myself. I think millions of others would say the same, but let me articulate it nonetheless. Whenever I am in Bangkok, I think Central Malls is one of the favorite destinations to hang out in. So I hope everything starts getting normalized, and along with Bali, I have a chance to visit Bangkok and Phuket, etc. again, and hang out in your malls as I used to do every time and meet Ton and others. But it's interesting what Natsuda said about partnerships not only being a win-win for both partners, but one of the challenges we've seen, and I'm speaking not just from my own perspective, I'm sure Casey and Natsuda agree, we are all ex-bankers. So it's not that bankers did not want to service the SME segment. There was no malified intention. It's just that the economics or the unit economics did not work out, and we did not, the effort required to do credit assessments for these small and medium enterprises did not make sense, especially for large banks like Citibank, or I don't know whether Goldman had a program for MSME lending, etc. During your time. But by joining forces with partners like Central, they mentioned about getting access to data and visibility, etc. as well. So tell us from your perspective, and I know that you guys collaborated. Now it's a few months since this collaboration has been finalized. What was the motivator? What was the driving force in partnering with Investree, and what did you see in a model like crowdfunding?
Yes, thank you, Malik. And I'm glad when you're here in Bangkok and Thailand, you enjoy them all. Glad for that. Really, it was a crisis which impacted our business. It impacted our business heavily. When I say impact our business, it meant impacted our tenants the most, right? Last year, we had to give over 12 billion baht of the discounts, rental reliefs to our tenants overall. And this year it seems to be about the same. So at the end of the day, our tenants are the ones who are quite hurt by the crisis. And our tenants, who are they? I mean, they are, and we have over 8,000 tenants as part of CPN. And with our 90+ properties here in Thailand, it's we depend a lot on them. So out of these 8,000 tenants, over 82% of them are SMEs, and that's why SMEs are very important to us, and we are very committed to working with them and growing them, especially in a country like Thailand. Sure, we have large corporations, large tenants, international clients working with us. Although they account for a large majority of space, but the SMEs are the ones who make a difference in our malls as well, as we expand about 3 to 4 malls a year. So it was a crisis that really started this, and we needed to help our SMEs. And obviously, CPN, we collaborate and work with a lot of banks here in Thailand. But the problem are with the SMEs who need assistance. And coming to meet Natsuda and her team, I think they really solved our problem and really are able to help the SMEs, because they service and cater and provide a good lifeline to the unbanked tenants and the clients and suppliers. So this is very important to us. And they were the first crowdfunding platform we decided to work with, because it was a company and a platform that made sense. It made it simple. The process was easy, and now we have clients, and the SMEs are able to get their funding very quickly, the approvals, and so it's been a good relationship thus far.
Thank you. And as I said, on the face of it, obviously this is an absolute win-win, a marriage made in heaven. It helps both the partners and their constituents. So let me, kind of go to Jonathan from there. And Jonathan, we've heard Isare talk about 80 or 82% of his, tenants being SMEs, and therefore it made a lot of sense. But you are a data technology company. Your advocacy is to drive and maybe help create more future-proof Philippines through empowered LGUs. And during my time in Citibank Philippines, almost 13, 14 years back, we were trying the same thing. How can we get LGUs on digital payments platforms, etc.? So obviously, you are trying to bring some of that to life through technology, and that's what LGU Suite does. How has technology helped the government sectors to develop the right kind of decisions which support MSMEs, especially the local government units? I'm not talking about the national government. And what would be the pain points that you've seen, especially amidst this pandemic, which are required which have been maybe overcome with the help of partners like you? And how have MSMEs managed to stay resilient in their business? Give us a little bit of an insight into that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Malik, for your questions. Okay, first of all, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce our company, LG Suite. So LG Suite is a data and information technology company, specifically catered to our niche market, the local government units, or these are the LGUs, especially those LGUs in the rural and far-flung areas. Local government units are the provincial governments, the municipal governments, and city governments in the Philippines. So LGUs are the political subdivisions with frontline services to its constituents. In total, LGUs in the Philippines numbered at 1,600. Currently, we have client relationship with more than 50 LGUs in the Philippines, or 3% market share. We are the only company so far with a platform as a service in the LGU market in the Philippines. So we plan to saturate up to 30% of all LGUs in the Philippines in the next 3 to 5 years. LG Suite is a company driven by advocacy that envisions a highly technological and future-proof Philippines through empowered local government units. With system platform, data, and tools, we empower these LGUs to create better plans, policies, ordinances, and also help in better allocation of resources. With automated systems, we make sure that government finances are better handled and would lessen government bureaucracy bureaucracy, and corruption. Rural or the far-flung areas do not have the system platform, money, and expertise to procure or develop their own systems, unlike rich and big local government units. So by providing them with a system platform and tools for governance in less expensive model, they can now procure these systems. In this way, they can compete with better equipped LGUs in the Philippines. With better local governance, it can create opportunities and jobs. We may lessen brain drain because of these opportunities. Rural areas can now be developed, so families will not be broken by accepting odd jobs abroad. In 10 years' time, we believe that LGU Suite will be synonymous with nation building and will provide material impact in better Philippines. So to answer the first question by Mr. Malik, how has LGU Suite incorporated and supported the empowerment of SMEs? One of our core products is the ByPlugs. It is a system platform and services that enables LGUs to generate indicators, data reports of all their constituent citizens and establishments. These are the MSMEs. We generate local employment by contracting them to do the field work as enumerators. They do house-to-house census of the household using a mobile application seamlessly connected with our project management for quality assurance and project timeline. Normally, data gathering takes around less than 3 months. Once our team validates the data, it can now be used by our local chief executive or the mayors for their planning, program implementation, budget allocation, policies, and others. The local chief executive has their own system dashboard that can generate statistics. So aside from that, these statistics, you can generate the people behind those statistics. So it's a very powerful database system. During the hard lockdown of the economy in the year 2020, most of our SMEs were closed down by government mandate. Our system was extensively used to generate a list of households and MSMEs that need financial assistance. In the Philippines, we call it the Social Amelioration Program. So by having these powerful systems, meager government resources can now be properly allocated to households and establishments that need much intervention. And again, the next question was, how has technology helped government sectors develop decisions to support SMEs? Again, using our technology platform, they can now have powerful databases of all its households and establishments. The data we provided to our local chief executives are accurate, complete, timely, and validated. So they use it as their baseline in crafting decisions and policies that will help their citizens and businesses navigate the new normal. Again, one example is the Social Amelioration Program that provides needed cash interventions to household and MSMEs. The next question is the pain points, especially amidst this pandemic situation, and how to stay resilient in the business. Because of the pandemic, there are lots of pain points MSMEs encountered. I will just enumerate the pain points that we as a company encountered. Number one is disruption in office operation. During 2020, we have to temporarily shut down our office operations and temporarily work from home. The initial few weeks were good, but eventually, with the nature of our business and the need for us as a startup to work fast, we decided that our teams be housed in separate bubbles, complete with accommodation and food. So support teams like finance,
Jonathan, we've lost your audio.
Can you hear me again?
Yes, please.
Okay, so sorry. Maybe it's an unstable connection here in the Philippines. Okay, so again, disruption in our office operation, one of the pain points. So what we do is that we created team bubbles. We created 3 team bubbles so that
Jonathan, I think we lost you again and you're frozen. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, Jonathan, we lost you again, but please go ahead.
Okay, so next pain points is the cash flow disruption. Of course, because of the pandemic, a lot of our collectibles from the government were disrupted. Some of our ARs were delayed due to emergency use of our client budgets to the pandemic response. Some were delayed due to COVID infections in our client offices, and few due to collection problems due to travel limits and bans. With limited liquidity, we also need to accept new projects that need cash to deliver, plus additional operational expenses because of our bubbles that we created. Next is yung client disruption. Due to the pandemic, we have to let go of some projects because of the travel ban, restriction, and limited cash flow. And the last is the business model disruption. Our model of lump sum project contracts with 4 to 6 is not compatible with the new normal. So we plan and decided to transition to a lump sum plus transactional model for us to be more resilient in the future. The pain points here are that we need to develop products and need more capital expenditure and operational expenses to achieve. Okay, so that's it. With partnership like Investree, in 2021, I read a news article that the first crowdfunding platform was registered and approved by the Philippine Securities and Exchange Commission, which is locally known as Investree Philippines. From there, we tried to apply for their invoice financing. We were approved and we were disbursed 80% of the face amount of our invoice. Since then, we had applied and approved a number of invoices and purchase order financing. We were very happy that fintech like Investree can help us in growing our company. We now have the confidence to get more projects and also bigger projects. Because of the help from our financing partner, Investree, we were growing tremendously this year. And we also addressed much of our pain points because of the pandemic. Number one, because of the fundings, we have the money to finance our 3 team bubbles and avoid further business disruptions because of the pandemic. Number two, we were able to add additional employees to help develop our new products. From the beginning of the year of 25 employees, now we are 40 at the end of the year. Next is we got the largest LGU in the Philippines, Quezon City, because of Investree. The next is Investree bridge cash flow gaps, and we pay our employees and suppliers on time. And also, we have able to procure laptops and other equipment. So thank you very much for your financing support. Because of Investree's help, we are now growing our company tremendously. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan, for that articulation, and congratulations on getting Quezon City. Quite an achievement. But in the interest of time, let me take a couple of audience questions, and I'm going to combine a few of them so that we can get the best value for the remaining time. One is from, it's anonymous, but it looks at what is the trend of companies and their capacity in repaying loans. So I think that's something I also wanted to ask about. Credit assessment, and we heard this earlier as well about alternative credit models. So especially with the pandemic, while players like Investree have kept the economy and the MSMEs going, is there a concern around repayment, etc.? What are the trends? Whatever you can share, which you feel free, in sharing, please do share about that, because it's an important lesson for the entire industry, and I'm keen to understand that. Also, this one comes from Andrew, which is correlated. We are seeing this, the recent Omicron variant, and then we've seen kind of a certain panic, and then now there are some reports coming in that, hey, it's not as scary as it was initially made out to be. But if you combine these two, one is a long-lasting impact of the pandemic, especially the economic impact of all of these lockdowns, and then these periodic scares of first Delta and now this new variant. I'm going to ask this question to either of the two, Casey and Natsuda, if whoever wants to answer from the side of Investree, and also Issaret. So from the other side as a mall operator, tell us, is this a real worry, and what is your assessment both in terms of quantitative data as well as qualitative understanding of your tenants and borrowers? Is this a real worry?
Ladies first, Natsuda.
Okay. In terms of the payment, we've been actually, prior to being crowdfunding, we were also lending out our own funds. So just so everyone knows, since becoming a crowdfunding, we've had zero non-performing loans, no, maybe delayed payments, but we have survived COVID, and the clients have survived during this COVID crisis. And I think the reason being is that we were laser focused on the SMEs that were able to survive, only needed, we only needed to subsidize a portion of the working capital. They continue to have, business. And also when people like Central Patna, even though the malls were closed, there was still things that they have to do, maintain the buildings, maintain the cleaning. So there was still business that had to be done. So we basically stuck to the sectors that were going to survive and that still need the essentials, basically the essential businesses. So those were the ones that we focus on first. In terms of the ongoing crisis, Omicron, we haven't run out of the Greek alphabet yet. Coming next is going to be pi and rho. And I think everyone in the world has gotten used to it. I think there are still a large percentage of people that haven't taken vaccines, but not in Thailand, we've done pretty well in taking up vaccines. And if you see the traffic in Bangkok, you see that life has started to come back. People are starting to live with it. Are we scared that the government will shut down again? Yes, there is that fear, but I think there's more fear of not having food on the table also. So I think that balance has made it even more difficult for the government to decide to shut down. And I think I'll leave to Issaret, who also is definitely more concerned about the shutdown, because his business is basically, bringing people to shopping malls, bringing people to hotels, bringing people to offices. So he's more concerned than me, because I help the suppliers that rely on him. So maybe I'll throw to Issaret about what is your outlook on the coming Omicron and pi and rho that may be coming.
Thank you, Natsuda. I think you probably spoke a lot about what I would like to say next already. I think we feel similarly, to be honest, concerned for our tenants, yes, of course, but certainly our tenants have a lot of concerns. So by working with a crowdfunding platform and company like Investree, I think that's one of a big concern that they have, how they're going to get their funding. Is they going to be able to still expand going forward, with us. So once that concern is out of the way, I think so they can focus on their business operations, which we are very appreciative of working with Investree at this point. Looking at the future, I think by the end of the year, 60 to 70% of our population will be vaccinated. So I think things will gradually return to normal. It has with our shopping malls over the past, since September, October, since the opening up after the lockdown, traffic at our malls have come back about 60, 70%, and then gradually even more now. So they're good signs, because people are not afraid anymore to come out, trying to live their lives as normal as much as they can. And for next year, we have a good outlook for next year, although other variants will be coming. But we feel that at the end of the day, people still would like to come out to socialize, to mingle, and to experience the mall and other activities in the malls. So we will continue business as usual, but in a very careful way. We have our own screening systems coming through the malls, screening our staff. et cetera, and et cetera, to make people feel that they are safe coming back into an environment like a mall.
Thank you, Natsuda. And is there any closing notes from you, Casey?
Maybe I can answer the first earlier bit of the question about how we try to assess credit with or without the pandemic situation. So the way we try to extend credit to SMEs is we'll look at the contracts. I mentioned supply chain earlier. So using Sir Jonathan's LGU Suites as an example, if we can verify that he's got contracts with Quezon City, Manila City, and we can get evidence from perhaps say his bank statements to prove that historically he's been getting paid from these LGUs, right? It gives us great confidence to go and extend credit to a company like his because he's got good quality contracts with well-known established payouts, right? So that's the way we try to extend credit. So this will probably extend towards all our operations, be it in Indonesia, Thailand, as well as the Philippines, as well as other countries. So that's the basic 101 of how we try to replace the SME credit with that of a large, reputable, bankable credit.
Thank you, Casey. And as we heard from Natsuda and Isaret earlier, that, well, the pandemic has been here for 2 years now. In a way, we've all learned to live with it. There are trade-offs between public health and security, but also about keeping the lights on. And as Isaret mentioned, I think more and more businesses have not only managed operating efficiencies and operating leverage, but also best practices in terms of how to manage staff and customer health and safety while keeping businesses going. So on that rather or somewhat upbeat note, it's my pleasure to conclude this panel. But before we end, I think we are due for a group picture. So I will turn it over to our hosts to tell us how you want to take a picture. We are here till you tell us. We will not disconnect. So organizers, this is the time where you can take our virtual pictures. We are on standby.
Amar?
Unless you want me to just take a screenshot and that's what a group photograph means. Okay, I think okay, it's done. Okay, it's done. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, and all our viewers, we come to the end of this panel. Some very interesting perspectives discussed here in a rather short span of time, and we unfortunately could not take all the audience questions, but hopefully you will have a chance to address them in the subsequent panels. With that, I want to sincerely thank all the 4 panelists for their kind of sharing and for very freely sharing their perspectives. Isaret, Jonathan, Casey, Natsuda, thank you for your time and your perspectives. Over to you, organizers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Recap.
Thank you to our esteemed guest speakers for sharing a very comprehensive overview of how fintech innovation creates resilient SMEs during global pandemic. And as we found out from the discussion, the pandemic has really affected the operations of SMEs regionally. But at the same time, it's really good to know that companies, with the help of digitalization, are collaborating and developing a robust ecosystem to ensure and provide impactful services for SMEs across the region. Also, thank you to our moderator for guiding the discussion between the panels. And of course, not to forget, thank you as well, our amazing attendees who have joined us for this session. Please note that this is the last parallel session in Investree Conference 2021, but there is actually 2 sessions left. So to participate in the remaining 2 sessions, please join our main room. And before we wrap up this session, I would like to say an additional thank you to our media partners, dailysocial.id, Good News from Indonesia, CNN Indonesia, Kompas.com, and Republika. My name is Amar Stevens. I hope the information that has been shared are very insightful and that most importantly, you have enjoyed the session. Stay safe and healthy, and I hope to see you again within the next few sessions. Goodbye. Let's go! Woo!